Good morning. We have determined that the rising level of hate and anti-Semitism in particular poses a clear and present danger to the safety and well-being of all New Yorkers. And I, as governor, am doing everything in my power to fight back. I'm joined today by State Police Lieutenant Andy Crow, who will be also speaking in a few moments about our response with respect to counterterrorism efforts. I just convened an emergency meeting with Jewish leaders and law enforcement to discuss strategies. I had the New York State Police Office of Counterterrorism, the MTA Police, the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, federal law enforcement, including the ATF, as well as religious leaders from various organizations in different parts of the state, and clergy as well. Here's what I share with them. The day that Hamas attacked Israel, October 7th, and the rise in hate crimes began instantaneously, I immediately deployed the state police to be on high alert to protect vulnerable assets. We've had regular disruptions now in our transit terminals, including a major incident at Grand Central over the weekend. And as we approach some of the busiest travel days of the year, heading into Thanksgiving, I want to make sure, as I spoke to these leaders in law enforcement, that they have a plan to ensure that our commuters will be able to go about their lives freely without disruption. But it's so much more than about just travel disruptions. It's painful to me as the governor of this great state that has been known for its diversity and how we celebrate different cultures, different religions, different viewpoints. It's painful to see the cruelty with which New Yorkers are treating each other everywhere from college campuses to our streets, to schools, to playgrounds, even as they're entering their houses of worship. And as I said, that's why, knowing these risks, I immediately deployed the state police to protect our synagogues and yeshivas and mosques and any other place that could be susceptible to hate crimes or violence. We contacted the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to share information about potential threats. I also announced significant increase in funding for our efforts, $75 million overall, $50 million for local law enforcement to beef up their efforts, as well as $25 million in security grants. State police have been out there. They've been embedded with local law enforcement. I've seen it with my own eyes as I visit different places of worship. And whether it's here in New York City, it's happening, and I'm grateful for their efforts. Also, we're very focused on the data we're collecting from surveillance efforts, what's being said on social media platforms. And we have launched an effort to be able to counter some of the negativity and reach out to people when we see hate speech being spoken about on online platforms. Our media analysis, our social media analysis unit has ramped up its monitoring of sites to catch incitement to violence, direct threats to others. And all this is in response to our desire, our strong commitment to ensure that not only do New Yorkers be safe, but they also feel safe. Because personal security is about everything for them. As I said, no one walking down the street or in a subway should feel they have to hide any indications of what their religious beliefs are. We expect to see people celebrating their lives, walking about freely, and that is no longer the case because people are living in fear. They have a right to do whatever they want here in the state of New York. And I've asked this group today, is there anything else we can and should be doing? We're doing what we know how to do, but any other ideas? And we've decided that what we've done in activating our hotline to report hate and bias incidences of all kinds is now being utilized, but there are more platforms and more places we can get that number out to. Because people are being subjected to horrible assaults and vile language, and they go back home not sure what to do with that knowledge that they've been violated. I want everyone to know this phone number because I said this is not just an opportunity to say, well, we took care of it, we have a hotline. I said to the law enforcement, I want to make sure that every single complaint is run down and investigated. And if they've crossed the line from hate speech into a hate crime, that there will be prosecutions. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I'm hearing that from so many others, particularly in the Jewish community. Our college campuses, students have been targeted. You heard me talk about what I witnessed at Cornell. And a message was sent that day and the day after when I said we'll make sure that all perpetrators of these crimes, threats, incitement to violence, calling on others to kill other Jewish students, perpetrators will be stopped and prosecuted. And the perpetrator in that case is now behind bars. These are young people who are vulnerable. They should not be living in fear. Here in New York City, we've had a huge spike in anti-Semitic incidences. I know that they're underreported. Hate crimes against Muslims are also being underreported. That is not how we can deal with them. We need the public to step forward. If you've been violated, you've been harassed, physically, verbally, you have to let us know so we can step up and protect you. The increase in anti-Semitic crimes is up 214% since October 7th. And sadly, I had been convening groups over the past years to talk about the increase year to year over the last 3 years as well. In September, we convened a group of individuals and talked about what we can do to deal with the rise in hate crimes on college campuses and other places, all before the floodgates were open on October 7th. We've not seen this level of hate crimes and fear since September 12th, 2001. People are concerned, they're worried, and today I'm going to continue taking any step I can to increase the security of our individuals, our members of the New York State community. Today I'm announcing that I'm deploying additional state police personnel to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. This high-level task force investigates international terrorism threats, domestic threats, cyber threats. And need I remind everyone that we have borders here in the state of New York, a northern border, a western border, that are protected by federal law enforcement, but resources are constrained. That's why we're working with local officials, state police, and others to make sure that our borders are protected. Wasn't that long ago that the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks came through a border from Canada, through western New York, and came to the city to do harm. We must be vigilant. We must protect against that scenario from ever happening again in our state. And by having state police investigators embedded with every operation, every FBI counterterrorism effort throughout the state, it's a large state, we have to make sure that they know we have the full support of the state police behind them, and we can use intelligence that help us get down to the local law enforcement. Now the counterterrorism squads in New York, Buffalo, Albany, Rochester will all have state police investigators. This will give us greater visibility into the investigations that are unfolding. Because I'd rather any day of the week, instead of talking about solving crimes, be in the business of preventing crimes. And that's what this is all about. We must continue to work together. If anyone thinks that they can get away with spreading hate and harming other New Yorkers and violating the law, you will be caught. You will be caught here in the state of New York because we are ramping up our resources to ensure that everyone can live freely. We have been involved in this. We'll protect protected speech. We will not protect people committing hate crimes. Not here in Manhattan, not in any borough, not in any one of the 62 counties, not on a college campus, not in a house of worship. We'll make sure that everyone has the resources to make sure that they are safe. And with that, I'd like to bring up Lieutenant Colonel Andy Crow, the Assistant Deputy Superintendent for the Office of Counterterrorism, to talk more about our efforts to keep New York State, what we expect New Yorkers to do in reporting, and to really look out for each other. I want to get back to that time, that space where New Yorkers can trust each other, be friends on a college campus again, be friends at a playground, in a workplace. Let's get back to that commonality that we've always shared throughout our history as New Yorkers. Treat each other with respect and kindness, and we will get through this together. I am confident, but we also make sure that we protect the well-being of our citizens, and that's why I'd like to introduce the state police right now to say a few words. Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. So through the governor's support, we have the state police, and in particular the Office of Counterterrorism, has benefited exponentially. The governor has enhanced our ability to develop intelligence and to identify people who are taking part in hate speech, trying to motivate themselves towards violence or incite others to violence. We identify those people, and we use our partnerships with our federal partners, with the city police here in New York City, and with our local and county partners out throughout upstate New York to investigate those people and to try to bring that to a successful conclusion with an arrest and prosecution. A good example would be what happened at Cornell. And we couldn't do that without the support of the governor. The expansion of the Joint Terrorism Task Force will allow us to embed ourselves more closely with our partners and to forge a stronger partnership with the FBI and our federal partners throughout the state to be involved in and to have visibility into every single counterterrorism investigation throughout the state, which involves domestic violent extremism, homegrown violent extremism, international terrorism, you name it. And I just want to say thank you, Governor, for your support, and it's much appreciated.
Just as an aside, we really increased our capacities for surveillance as well as responding to terrorist threats in the aftermath of the Buffalo massacre that occurred on May 14, 2022. We added more resources to the operations of Lieutenant Crow, the counterterrorism efforts to, again, try to thwart the actualization of these threats, as we were not able to do, was not occurring with the Buffalo situation, but we have seen other cases where that early warning signal can go off. You can see something that allows you to intervene before we have a disaster happen. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Let's start with any on topics.
Mind if I come closer?
Governor, so how many state police will be deployed to each of these offices, and does that mean that they will be leaving other assignments? And will any additional funding be dedicated towards this? And, you know, will officers be making overtime? Again, will there be more money in the budget for this?
We'll make sure that this effort has all the financial resources it needs. This is not a time to say that we have to save the extra dollars. I want to save lives. I want to save people and protect their security. So we'll make sure the resources are there. I believe it's at least 10 more people. Do you want to speak to where they'll be going?
So we will be assigning extra investigators to New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, and Albany to work in partnership with those RAs throughout the state.
And how many specifically, and will New York City get more cops than the other regional bureaus?
New York City will get a higher number of the GTTF investigators just because of the number of cases that will happen down here.
Could you give me a number of how many investigators?
I believe the number's 7.
Okay. Thank you.
The Joint Terrorism Task Force has been there for many, many years, operating to be preemptive in preventing any kind of terrorism attacks, whether it's domestic or abroad. And to now expand this effort to be monitoring hate crimes and threats online is really an important dynamic. It's been ongoing, but it has had to really be ramped up now because of the incredible surge in hate speech and threats that are occurring online. So, we'll continue. We'll monitor. Is this enough? We'll soon find out, and we'll find out if we need more. I'll make sure that we have all the resources that law enforcement needs to do their jobs.
All right, Jay in the back.
Hi, Governor. Good morning. You mentioned that you met with Jewish leaders this morning. Are there any plans to meet with Muslim leaders in the same capacity, given the fact that you mentioned that hate crimes on both sides are underreported? And then a separate question for Lieutenant Colonel Crow. Can you get into the specifics of the technology on how you're able to increase the surveillance?
I met with Muslim leaders on Thursday, I believe it was, convened them in the same conference room, and talked to them about the fact that they're hearing more anecdotally about these threats, but they're not being reported. And I encourage them to make sure they are being reported so they can be talked about and investigated. I have no tolerance for hate and violence against anyone. And they heard this right from me, so I already had that convening a short time ago. And we'll continue these dialogues and bring these conversations, not just here, but also elsewhere to college campuses and workplaces. But no, I did just meet them. Do you want to talk about the second part of the question?
Yes. In terms of software that would give us a greater capability to identify hate speech, we use several different software platforms that will help us identify keywords and particular instances of hate speech where they're trying to incite violence and or motivate themselves to violence.
And a quick follow-up, Governor. I know the mayor is planning a joint roundtable with Muslim and Jewish leaders this afternoon. Do you have any plans to do the same, to bring both together at the same time?
Yes, we will be doing that, and I was invited to the mayor's event, but I'm hosting veterans in the governor's residence very shortly. This was an emergency meeting I convened this morning, and we absolutely do have plans. I've been speaking with religious leaders, imams, and rabbis, and there already are some organizations that are trying to do this, and I want to make sure we take it to a higher level. This is essential. When I talked about my strong desire to try and put back the pieces and bring people back together again in a sense of shared humanity, everyone is suffering. Whether you lost a family member in Gaza or you lost a family member at a kibbutz in Israel, the pain is real. And we are acknowledging that, and we have to lead. New York will always lead in this space. We're at a difficult time right now, but I do believe that we can work together and bring people together and have respect prevail. We need to get back to that level again. Any other questions on topic here?
Are there any, outside of what happened at Cornell, are there any active investigations into threats right now in the state of New York?
Oh, yes. I'll let you speak to current active investigations.
So I can't talk about particular individual investigations, but I can tell you that the number has increased exponentially since October 7th. The number of investigations we're involved in as an entity, the state police and the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Similar to what we saw at Cornell, where there are death threats posted online?
Again, I can't get into the particulars of the investigations, but we are very active.
All right, I think we're going to take maybe one or two off-topic questions. Lieutenant Colonel, I think we thank you.
Anything else, Lieutenant Colonel? Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it very much.
All right, let's start with
Governor, have you or anyone in your administration been contacted by federal agents regarding the probe into Mayor Adams's campaign finances? And also, have you or anyone in your administration been contacted by the government of Turkey or associates in regards to business before the state?
No to both.
Do you have any additional comment about the ongoing investigation into the mayor's campaign finances?
No, as I said, we're continuing to work together. We have many issues. We spoke about what we're doing to combat the rise in anti-Semitism, how we can protect our transportation assets like Grand Central, and as we talked about some issues at Floyd Bennett Field. So I want people to know that, we are still managing our governments, the state and the city, because that's what we do. So that has not been compromised, but I have no comments on the investigation. We never comment on investigations.
Would you be supportive of a primary from the left flank of the Democratic Party ahead of the 2025 mayoral campaign?
I will not be addressing any prospects of a primary in New York City. I'm working with the mayor and working on issues that are our common interest. I also represent the city of New York. We have a lot of issues we're working on, particularly public safety in this environment, which has been uniquely challenging. So we're going to keep working together.
And speaking of things you're working with the mayor, Floyd Bennett Fieldhouse, there were reports that some, maybe most of the migrants that were taken there last night said we don't want to be here and left. I want to get your reaction to that. And then also, the mayor has been aggressively pressuring other New York politicians to get help, join him in getting help from D.C. Did you think it was appropriate for him to ditch his trip to D.C. a week and a half ago to come back to the city?
Last time I was asked that question, I said I don't comment on the mayor's travel plans. He doesn't comment on mine. But that would not have been his first trip to Washington to talk about this. I mean, these conversations, and I know from my own experience, I've gone probably 10 times now in person over the last year and a half to try and plead for help from the federal government. What I need right now is the money that the Republicans in the House of Representatives are saying they will not give President Biden, that we desperately, desperately need here in the state of New York, particularly in the city. So I'm aligned with the mayor in that request. Yes, let's enlist everybody we can. How about Republican members of Congress stepping up to help us? We can get this done. They're in charge in the House of Representatives. Give us that money. It'll help take some of the pressure off on what we're dealing with. Floyd Bennett Field is is an emergency option. I mean, we are at capacity. We have 65,000 people being housed right now, and we're at capacity. We've been saying this for a long time. So we have a facility. It has met standards of safety, and it's not ideal for anyone, But on the other hand, when you don't have a larger shelter system, as makeshift as it's been, we have to go with this as an option, at least temporarily. I understand that new people, new arrivals are being escorted there. That's where they'll go. But the main thing, imagine a world where everyone could work. We're putting people out here because they don't have the ability to take care of themselves. Put them to work. Not just the Venezuelans, but the next group of Ecuadorians. Let's have the conversation about allowing more people to work. I have 460,000 open jobs in the state of New York, over almost 40,000 jobs that were identified on our Department of Labor website. For people to say, as soon as they get a work authorization, I'll hire them. That's transformative. Remember, a lot of the numbers of migrants, we talk about the scale, the 65,000, a lot of those are children. They're not even eligible to work, so I would take them right out of any calculation and look at the population of able-bodied adults, and I have employers begging for them. So Floyd Bennett Field is a temporary holding place. The main objective, the main solution is to let them work.
What is the status of your consideration of doing stage work permits? Is that still on the table, and is that?
I'm constrained by the law, okay? As I pursued this and wanted to identify a means where I could have a breakthrough for New York, for the employers to help solve their crisis in the shortage of workers and solve the crisis of having to take care of people because they can't take care of themselves until they get a job. But pursuing it has led us to the conclusion that I cannot protect employers under this scenario. As much as the state of New York can say, we'll hire people and allow them to be subcontracted out, which I thought was our plan, but I cannot indemnify or protect the employers from any kind of federal prosecution for violating immigration laws. That's the only barrier, and it's a big one.
All right, last one, Jay.
So I was out at Floyd Bennett all day yesterday. A majority of the families that we saw, they stayed in the center, but there were several who declined, and they boarded a bus, which we were told took them and dropped them off at the Stillwell Avenue, Coney Island train station. In your opinion, would it be appropriate to have some kind of additional follow-up for those families, since technically they're relinquishing their bed at the site once they walk away from it?
Right. The situation is difficult. These people, these migrants, these people in search of asylum, they have been accommodated in many times hotel rooms in New York City for long periods of time. That's not sustainable. And so the option is to say, if you want to take advantage of public supported housing and shelter for now, this is your option. Floyd Bennett Field is available. It's there. We're creating transportation networks to get people to jobs and whatever else they may need. So we're trying to do the best we can. So I think particularly newcomers who've gone through an incredibly dangerous and arduous journey to come here in the first place, realizing that the hotel option is no longer on the table, they would view this as an option. Their other option is to do what migrants have done for decades before, and that is to start to stay with family members and other other connections they may have to their home community. There was never a Venezuelan population here in New York City because the government and the economy in Venezuela were functioning for a long time, up until the latest dictator and the implosion of the economy led to so many people having to flee political persecution and economic dire straits. So that is the newer dynamic, which is why there's not a whole community to welcome them and embrace them as has in the past. As more start to get out and have jobs and start to find a place to live, that's where newcomers can go, as has always been historically the tradition. So that's the answer.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Governor, does the investigation ability to get federal funding on the migrant crisis?
Not at all. Not at all. No, we have a job to do. We're still working.